Hi, and welcome. Today we have as our guest Cindy Olah. She's the owner of Sacred Garden Yoga in Alpharetta, Georgia. She's a high priestess, a shadow worker, a storyteller, a yoga teacher, and a master energy practitioner. As a spiritual entrepreneur, by the way, I love that term, for 19 years, she affirms in herself and in others that it's okay for you to be what you want and have everything that you want. So I don't think I need to explain why I think Cindy's awesome and why we have her on today. I think that statement says it all. You know, this is what we're about at Vixen, helping you rediscover who you are and who the new higher version of yourself is. And that's why we've welcomed Cindy on today to talk about the power of pleasure. So Cindy, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
I am so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And I am loving that fur, by the way. Super beautiful.
hmm
And cozy. So I'm also excited to have Cindy. I think it was December 2021. I actually worked with Cindy at a very pivotal time in my life. So I want to focus on Cindy first. But if I get the opportunity, I'd love to share my story and why I found it important to work with you at that time. So we're going to dive in, Cindy. And I'd love for you to share with our audience and the women listening today, what is a pivotal moment in your life or a story that you feel created the version of you, the woman sitting here with us today?
Well, when I started off my whole spiritual development and awakening started probably when I was in my mid 20s. But a big pivotal point was I used to work in the corporate world, which seems like a totally different lifetime ago. I was actually in the mortgage business. I was a mortgage underwriter, if you can believe that, which is so totally different from what I'm doing now. But at that time, I was like in my late 20s or so, in the early 30s, and I had the job. I had my own home. I had already bought my own home at that time. I had my car. I purchased my own car. I had my own home. I had a boyfriend who I was very attracted to. I had this great relationship with him. And I had everything that I'm supposed to have, especially
Mhm.
at that age. Like I had everything that was supposed to make me feel good and to make me feel successful. Everything was wrapped up for me that way. But for some reason, I didn't feel it. I wasn't feeling it inside of
Mhm.
me that I had reached or achieved what I wanted to achieve. And then that had me asking these bigger questions. I'm like, okay, well, I have everything that I want to have. Of course, I'm only like I said, 20s or 30s, and there's only so much you figure out about life during that time, anyways. And so it had me seeking and asking the bigger questions. I'm like, okay, I've achieved all this stuff at this age. Why am I not feeling that sense of success or completion that everyone says I'm supposed to be feeling, especially as a woman? Especially as an independent woman, because I was at
Mhm.
that time, a very independent woman. So I have all these things, and why am I still feeling like I'm a hot mess? And that had me asking some of the bigger questions. And at that point, I had already been studying yoga, and I have gotten my while I was still working in the corporate business in the corporate world. I had already gotten like my yoga teacher certification. I had already become a Reiki practitioner.
Mhm.
I had already become like a certified hypnotherapist. So that part of my life had already started to happen, had already started to unfurl. And then I decided, okay, well, I'm going to open up a yoga studio, thinking that that's going to fix everything. Right? I was like, let me just open up a yoga studio and let's see if that like changes and fixes everything. And of course, the universe aligned for me to have the finances and everything that I need to open up, to buy the space that I'm in now and to open it up. And so I opened up the yoga studio, and I'm thinking, okay, now everything's gonna like magically fall into place. But it got worse. Like everything just radically fell apart at that point. I opened up the yoga studio, and of course I was new to business, and I didn't know how to run a business, and so that there was that whole part of it. And so then all my money that I had saved up went away. And
Mm-hmm.
then my relationship with my husband started to, because, by this time we had been married, and, our relationship started to struggle. And then my life just felt like completely fell apart even more. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? What's the deal? Why is my life not perfectly coming together the way that it's supposed to be, even after I've made all these rearrangements? And of course, the rearrangements that I was making was on the outside,
Mm-hmm.
but they really had to be internal. I had to personally go through my own dark night of the soul, which seemed to last for a couple of years. I mean, I'm sure you're
Wow.
familiar with the concept of the dark night. Um,
Yeah.
and
If you
and of course it reached an apex. It reached the point where it got really, really hard and really tough. But going through that process, though, was teaching me so much about my own worthiness, and where I was putting all my worthiness outside of
Mm-hmm.
myself, and, what society thinks I should be, and the roles that I'm supposed to play. And until this day, I'm still figuring that out. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think it's an everyday, because that's a tough one. That's a tough nut to crack. um, but then also continuing to ask these bigger questions. It's like, well, why isn't my life just coming together? And there was so much that I had to do about, yes, owning, what an empowered woman actually means, but like on a deeper, visceral level, and
Mm-hmm.
going through the breaking apart, so that I could then build myself back up again. But ultimately, one of the bigger realizations that I had is kind of like what you said in the introduction. It was realizing that there was a part of me that believed that I couldn't have everything that I wanted if I wasn't myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had to be all these other things. I can't be myself. I can't be like this kind of witchy, woo woo, spiritual person and be successful and have someone who loves me. There are some deeper embedded programmings that were going on there, but that in essence was, what it came down to.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's a work in progress, still figuring that out, always is. But that's why I feel what I do is help people come to that point in their lives and say, it's okay to be who you are.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
okay to be who you are, to have what you want.
oh, totally. And I think so many, women listening, while they may not come out the back end becoming a shadow worker or a high priestess, they can totally understand this moment where you realize so much of your validation is external, right? We're looking for other people to tell us we're okay. And I think, with our generation, we grew up with parents like, in status or that had grown up in certain social norms, etc. And while we weren't quite programmed as heavily, we had that because we were raised by parents like that. And so deprogramming that so that we can rebuild ourselves is such a big deal, and something that I'm not sure everyone is yet aware of. They're going through it, but they don't really know what they're doing. So, and I want to ask you a favor. So, just go a little deeper into the dark night of the soul for our audience. So, some people are watching, and this might be a new concept for them. So, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of, share what was going on with you spiritually, internally, and what was happening.
Hmm. Well, the thing that triggered it was my husband and I were having some relationship issues.
Mm-hmm.
And um, it really brought up some of those deeper insecurities within me. And there was like this pivotal day. It was a pivotal evening, actually. And I remember I was here in my home, and I was at the bottom of the stairs, and my bedroom is at the top of the stairs. And I remember looking up the stairs and thinking to myself, oh no, It's like something is going to happen when I go up those stairs and I'm with myself, with all of this pain that I'm feeling in a dark night of the soul. It's like this breaking apart, and it feels
Mm-hmm.
like a shattering. If you've ever experienced yourself just completely shatter, and the feeling of that shattering is what produces that deep discomfort of what we would call like an ego death.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up to my room, and I was up there by myself that evening. And the whole, I mean, that's all I felt was just this complete shattering where all I could do was be on the floor. I couldn't even like be standing up. It was too much effort to even be standing up. I was on the floor, and the only thing that I could tell myself was, okay, just one breath at a time. Because you know the saying, like one day at a time? That was too long. I was like,
Wow.
one day at a time, that's too long. Just one breath at a time. One breath at a time. And that's what got me through that particular night, that particular evening. So that was
Mm-hmm.
like, that was the apex of it. There is, I think, a lot of things that brought me up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually is and one thing I also knew, the affirmation that I kept getting was, you have to go through this by yourself. This is like you with yourself. Like no one else can come in and save you. Only you can save yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
need to sit with yourself through this time. And that was it. And that's what it felt. It just felt like me and myself with my emotions. And I made it through. I made it through to the other side. And I kept breathing one day at a time, and eventually, um, through that, the breaking open that happens,
Mm-hmm.
then new light, the light comes in through those cracks. And then I would get information, even if it was just a little bit of a time. I might have not had like the bigger picture, but I did get like insight. Okay, now this is what you have to do next. All right. This one little step is what you have to do next. Okay, you did that, good. Okay, now this is what you have to do. But it would come. And a lot of it was me trusting in that process as well. And that was also the process of the rebuilding, learning how to
Mm-hmm.
trust in myself again. But yeah, those dark night of the soul experiences, that's the best way I could. I mean, you could go into the psychology of it because, Carl
Right.
Jung and all these other people have described it. But what it feels like is just a shattering of who you
Yeah.
used to be. And it's like this ego death. And it's not comfortable, but it's also necessary for you to then be able to upgrade and step into who you are here to become. But it was that process that allowed me to also develop my own skills at becoming a shadow worker and helping other people go through their moments of dredging up what needs to come up so that they can shine the light of awareness onto whatever needs to come up for themselves and getting them to the other side as well.
I
I
love it.
hope that
Thank
answers
you.
your question, April.
Yeah. No, totally. And there's so many other things you said in there. I mean, I so I started my spiritual journey in 2012. I just remember I saw a spiritual healer on TV. I was like, I think I need one of those. Like, I just remember thinking that. And I was like, I don't know. So I had a client who I didn't know what she did, but I said, hey, I think I need a spiritual healer. Do you know someone I could talk to? And she said, oh, come Sunday. We meet every Sunday. And I went, and it was kind of open heart meditation, but also Reiki and different things. And so I was just like, they were like, can we do a healing on you? I'm like, sure. I'm like, I don't know what you guys did, but I had the best sleep of my life and popped up the next day. And I was like, I'm going back next Sunday. So I had no idea what I was getting into. I just felt this calling. And then, you know, if we fast forward to 2020, I think for most people, it got accelerated, right? During COVID, when we had all this time to ourselves and time alone. And I had started working with a spiritual healer in 2019, just, you know, sessions here and there, not consistent. And then 2020, you said, you know, you have to save yourself. I was reading this book from Coot Blackstone, and the first chapter said, no one's coming to save you. And that's just like what sticks in my head and what I always tell my clients and people I'm chatting with, right? Like, you have to save yourself. So anyway, thank you for sharing that. That was super insightful. And for me, I think you and I were working together end of 2021. And at Christmas that year, I was sick for 2 weeks, which of course I was not sick. I was going through pretty much what you've described and just detoxing. And it felt like your body's rearranging. It's so crazy, like your internal organs. And I slept a lot and meditated a lot and prayed a lot. And then I showed up Christmas Day and New Year's Day. That was it. I was just like, I'm emerging. And so this year I went to the Caribbean for that week because I was like, I really like just having that time to myself. So it's kind of crazy. Everybody thinks you have to be with family. You have to do this at Christmas. And since I had that experience with you, you know, I've put in that boundary of making that time for myself. So I'd like to thank you for that. And it's super, you know, revives me for the new year and gets me ready for everything coming. So I can totally relate to that. So we talked about some heavy, deep, dark stuff, and I appreciate you being so open and vulnerable with us, but we'll have a little bit of fun. So we have Vixen cards, because when we have events, I personally hate small talk, so we can only chit-chat about what's on the cards, unless we're having group discussion. So we're going to see what the universe wants to hear from you. This is a good one. If you could go back in time, what age would you be and why?
Oh my gosh. If I could go back in time, I would probably, the first thing that came to mind, because all I can do is just go with the image and the first thing that comes to mind. It would be to my teenager self.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a teenager that still lives inside of me anyway. I don't know if you ever feel like, it's like I have this rebelling teenager that's still alive and well inside of me. But there's also like some stuff, there's a lot of insecurities within that teenager self. You know, like going through the high school year, and I can feel that part of her too. And I would probably go back to that time, like the time around high school, and just show up. And if I could just talk to that teenager, you know, just show up with more confidence and just saying, hey, you know, you're gonna be okay, and it's okay to like enjoy yourself. And I was also shy. I'm more of an introverted person, honestly. Yeah. And boy, back then I was too. Like, and I had to work on speaking skills. Like, I had no ability to communicate well. And if I could just go back and tell that teenage girl, hey, you know, just live your life, have fun, and don't worry about what other people think. I think that part I would probably relive, you know, with a little bit more enthusiasm and excitement instead of so much like insecurity. You know what I mean?
I love that. So you would go back to a time where you could work on yourself, huh? Accelerate the growth.
I guess so. That's where my mind works, though. I guess I've been doing this too long. My mind is going to go back. Okay, like, where can I heal?
Love it. That's so funny. I thought of my 7-year-old self, which is funny because my niece is 7 right now, or turning 7 into this month. And I just remember how free I was. We had actually just, you know, gone to Six Flags in Atlanta. And I came back and I had this silly little rainbow visor. Like, if you remember from the 80s, the visors, right? Yes. And I just remember running around my neighborhood all summer with that visor on, just like being totally free. So for me, I think I'd go back to like my freest self. But I like this idea of,
I love that.
where would I go to like coach myself? Because I love asking clients that when they're stuck, right? Like if your future higher self came back, what advice would they give you for this moment? So, yeah, you're definitely a healer and a coach at heart because you're going back taking care of
Right?
yourself. Love it. Thank you so much. All right, so let's get into the good stuff. So I'm calling this the power of pleasure. But when we were working together, you introduced one concept where you had me set up my altar with some different ideas, and you were like, just put a stick of honey to remind you that life is juicy. Like enjoy the juicy moments. And so I started this silly practice. We had this thing of, the small Hershey's for clients. And every day I'd go eat just one a day, because I don't really eat candy. And that just reminded me like to take myself less seriously. It was just like a reminder to myself to have fun and have juiciness. And now I actually have pink color coded on my calendar. So that's all my fun that I plan in and make sure I have. So that's super important. So, share with us today, when you're working with your clients, and you pretty much work all with women, is that fair to say, or predominantly?
Predominantly with women, yeah. I
Okay.
have a few guys, but predominantly with women, yeah.
Awesome. So quick question, not to put you on the spot. Who do you think has
Hmm.
more issues with pleasure, men or women?
Oh my gosh, probably women.
Yeah, I would agree.
Hmm.
So let's talk about that. Why do you think that women hold back on pleasure or maybe feel guilty about pleasure? What do you find when you're chatting with your clients?
Well, there's a couple of things. Well, one, it's just the heavy emotion of shame that's wrapped
Hmm.
around pleasure. That's like a big part of it. And then also the fact that pleasure, or the idea of pleasure, it's like a luxury. That's the last thing that we need to be worrying about. Like, I don't have time for pleasure in my life. There are other things that are more important than pleasure. I have to be, whatever roles that you play. I need to first be a good mom, or I need
Hmm.
to be a good wife or partner, or I need to be good at my job, and or then I need to go cook dinner, and then I need to do the laundry. And there's so many things that we do that we think of pleasure as something that comes later. In other words, we don't make it a priority. We don't make it an important part of our life.
Hmm.
So I would say those two things. One, there's a certain amount of shame that's wrapped around pleasure in the sacral area of our body when it comes to feeling things, and allowing ourselves to feel pleasure. And the idea that pleasure is excess. No,
Hmm.
we shouldn't be. It's sinful on some level. And you can talk about sexual pleasure, any kind of pleasure that, or it should, um you shouldn't play. And it's also part of a lot of the original traditional philosophies that tell you that desire is bad, and desire and pleasure, of course, they're intertwined. But what I love about the feminine process, or the sacred feminine path, in yoga, that would also be called the tantric philosophy. It's
Hmm.
the philosophy of the Shakti, or the sacred feminine, embraces pleasure. It embraces your humanity,
Hmm.
instead of saying, oh, well, pleasure, that's for someone being like dumb and human and small, and you should be praying, or you should be meditating, or you should be levitating, or you should be like saving the world, or you should be doing these things. You shouldn't be going down into your lower part of you, your humanity, into this lower part of you, because that part is like dirty, or it's not spiritual.
Hmm.
The idea and that's where some of that shame gets intertwined into it, and the fact that we do put pleasure as a back seat. So it's just all this like misprogramming. I think it's just misprogramming of what pleasure actually is, and we're confused about it, and that's
Hmm.
why we put it to side, or we don't make it a priority in our lives.
Yeah, and it's interesting the way you framed it. Thank you for that, because it has me thinking because, part of our core values in Vixen, one is balancing our humanity with our spirituality. Because, I feel we were put on earth for a reason. Like we're in human bodies for a reason is the easiest way I say it, right? So to really enjoy like, those human moments and, still try to be, give homage to the spiritual being you are, but there's a reason we're in this body on earth. And what are we supposed to be experiencing and doing? And I love how, you bring to the forefront that pleasure is very much a part of that. So I know
Pleasure is spiritual. The somewhere along the line, like desire and pleasure got separated from spirituality, but it's not like in as we know, like you can experience deep pleasure and you can have some really spiritual deep connections. You have moments of realizing the beauty. You see the beauty
it's
in the
true.
world, or you experience the beauty. When you experience that, it gives you a sense of that upliftment that we all seek in our spiritual practice. Like you can go through pleasure, just like we go through our bodies, you go through pleasure to experience the pleasure, or excuse me, to experience the spiritual. It doesn't have to be like pleasure is here and then spiritual is there. They're intertwined.
I like it. So share with us, by I guess starting to dip your toe in pleasure. Because for most women, I mean, I swear 8 out of 10 women I talk to, when I ask them, hey, when's the last time you had pure pleasure? I had one woman I asked, she burst out crying. Like she couldn't remember, right? And so a lot of times they can't remember because of all the roles you're talking about and putting everyone first, right? So the reason I say dip our toe in, because it would be such a leap for them to jump into it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, why is that important spiritually, and what else would it lead women to?
Well, if you are in pleasure,
Hmm.
you're also in gratitude. Do you ever notice that?
Hmm.
Like, if you're in deep pleasure, are you in scarcity, or are you even thinking about scarcity, or are you even thinking about lack? When
Right.
you're in that space of pleasure, you're also in the space of everything being enough. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's like you are experiencing life's fullest pleasure, whether it is that piece of chocolate that you're talking about, or maybe it was just a sexual experience, or maybe it was a
Hmm.
beautiful sunset that the just the beauty of it, because I think beauty is also pleasure. And you're in that moment of your deepest pleasure. There is no lack, there is no scarcity. So pleasure has a very similar frequency to abundance and
Hmm.
gratitude. So if when you are in your deepest pleasure, you are in joy, and you are naturally in a state of abundance without having to think about abundance, and you are naturally in this state of gratitude. And we all know that, gratitude, that in itself is a spiritual practice. Like, you do your gratitudes in your gratitude journal. Well, just be in pleasure, and the being in pleasure will align you with both that abundance and gratitude.
I love it.
And yeah, and that's what I've learned. That was a big aha moment for me, was when I realized that. I'm like, oh, look at that. Look at this connection to all of this, and the beauty of that kind of feminine, that Shakti, that sacred feminine path of embracing the beauty in life and seeing it as a way through into spirituality.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, I actually try to catch the sunrise and the sunset every day. If I have a great spiritual experience in between, perfect day.
Exactly.
So I'm with you. Yeah, I love that. No, I think that's such a great way to explain it for, women who are struggling, like you said. I mean, one, there's a detriment where women are having trouble putting themselves first because, they're trying to balance having a business, being a wife, being a mother, just making sure, one of my good friends recently said it best. She was like, I would love to get there, but I'm like in survival mode right now. So, question for you. It would seem to me you might be in survival mode, but if you find a way to insert some pleasure in there, to me, it feels like you're going to get out of survival mode quicker. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's taking the time, because another thing that pleasure does, because if you think about what your body is going through when it's in survival mode, your nervous system it's a nervous system thing. Your nervous
Right.
system is in fight or flight or freeze mode. So and all those hormones that cause that within your body are activated, like cortisol and all those other hormones that react to that fight or flight or freeze. Whereas when you start to experience pleasure, then you start to activate the pleasure hormones like dopamine and shoot, my mind just went blank. There's the other ones, the other good hormones.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think dopamine is the one that it's the love hormone. And then there's the other, there's like three others. I guess
Yep.
in my mind just one. You can look that one up. But it starts to activate those other hormones, the feel good hormones within your body. And when that gets activated, your nervous system can actually come out of survival mode. Because
Wow.
you got to think that you're not just working like energetically, but you want to work through the body itself, because your body responds to every single thought that you're having. Every cell in your body responds to every thought that you're having. And every action has to move through the body. And if you start to understand that when you're in fight or flight mode, that there's these hormones that are kicking in, and unless we give that a break, like doing something to invite in more joy or more pleasure, then that will start to activate the pleasure hormones within your body. And then your body can start to come out of survival mode. And when your body comes out of survival mode, then so can your mind. Then you can start to see things more clearly. You're not seeing through the lens of your wounds or through your trauma or through, all the stuff that's going on in your life. And that's the key. It's like breaking through that in every single layer of you, with the physical layer, the mental layer, the emotional layer. So anything that you can invite in that's going to help to restore your nervous system, especially when you're in fight or flight mode, would totally be helpful.
Yeah. And then they can get out of it and be better at everything they do, including being themselves. So, yeah, I love that. No, you broke that down beautifully. And, what I heard is there's a spiritual, energetic, and a physiological argument that you need pleasure, right? Pleasure should be
Yes.
part of our life. And then the mind gets freed. So then you get to the psychological component. So, yeah, I love that. And controlling your emotions. I mean, I think emotional control is so important in our world right now because there's a severe lack of it. I joke that the world needs a lot more love, but it also needs a lot more like emotional healing and, cleansing and control of our emotions so that we can show up as better human beings. So, awesome. Thank you, Cindy. That was amazing. I love how you broke down why we should be having pleasure instead of us just telling women, hey, you should have this, right? Actually explaining to them how it's going to benefit them, their spirituality, their health, and then they show up better for everyone around them. So I love that. So while I have you on here, I'd love to chat about another topic. I know we were going to dig deep into pleasure, but this is one I had kind of been grappling with recently. And I came to peace with is, we talk about getting back to the divine feminine and living from that place. But the divine feminine could look different for each woman, or there are different aspects or archetypes, whatever you want to say. So can you chat about that a little bit? Like, one time you told me, I loved it. You were like, yeah, they've programmed us that we should be light pink, and what if we want to be fuchsia, right? So, I mean, personally, I choose magenta. That's like my feminine color, but we're making light of it. But it's a pretty serious topic, because what we don't want is, and I even feel myself spiraling into this, is shaming ourselves for not being feminine enough or not being divine feminine as we're trying to journey back into that space and that part of ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, there's a grit to the high feminine, or to the deep feminine, or the sacred feminine. Yeah, like you said, there's the idea of the feminine that's kind of been fed to us throughout the years, where the divine feminine, she must be nurturing and caring, and yeah, kind of like those light pink colors. And if we think of some of the archetypes of, if you go through the Christian side, you think Mother Mary, the caring mother, the nurturing mother, um, uh, and yeah, of course there is that, but just using that, I mean, well, I know that you're going to be putting this out in June, but we're recording it on Good Friday. Today's Good
Oh,
Friday,
yes,
right?
good point.
So maybe that's why Mother Mary popped into my brain. But if you think of what else is there, and even if you look at the archetype of the mother, let's just look at
Hmm.
the archetype of the mother. I mean, the mother is so much more than just caring and giving and nurturing. She
Hmm.
is also has within her this grit, one, to birth.
Hmm.
The birthing process, it's such, I mean, that is just pure instinct, and that is primal.
That's true.
That the mother also holds that extreme primal energy, and the energy to also defend at any
Hmm.
cost, the energy to if you think of the feminine of the old, like the doulas, yes, there were the birth doulas, but then there's also the death doulas,
Mm.
to have the capacity to take someone from life all the way to death.
Wow. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not just pink and cute and nurturing. There's a deeper essence to that. There's a grit. There's a inner fortitude that comes from being able to access those different levels in those different parts of yourself.
Hmm.
Then, if you look at the different archetypes that come from other traditions, in the Hindu tradition, there's Mother Kali, Kali. And if you
Hmm.
see her, I don't think I have any pictures of Kali here, but she's one of my favorite archetypes of the feminine. And she is so fierce looking. She's blue, her tongue is sticking out. She wears skulls around her, that's her necklace. Is She wears a necklace of skulls, and she wears a belt of severed arms,
Oh my
and she's
gosh.
wielding her
Yes.
sword.
Yeah, yeah. So
But that's
she's the
also,
warrior. Yeah.
yeah, but that's also an aspect of the sacred feminine that comes in when we can't do the work ourselves of breaking down. Like, she comes in with the highest level. Like, we look at her and we think she's just a fierce warrior, but she's also serving love. She comes in with
Mm.
the highest loves and tears down and breaks down all the parts of you that are no longer serving you, that you can't do yourself. And it's
The
going to be
shedding.
painful going
Yep.
through the process, but at the same time she's holding and nurturing you and telling you it's going to be okay, and we're going to get you to another side. She is
Hmm.
an aspect of the mother as well. She's mother, like Mother Kali. She's one of the highest divine mother aspects. So there is so many different layers of what it is just within the mother archetype.
Yeah.
um And then you can go into the other archetypes like Mary Magdalene, the archetype
Hmm.
of the priestess, of the lover,
Yep.
and what that actually entails in, the your sexual creativity, your sexual power, the sexual prowess, but in a good way. And what
Yeah, no, I
comes
love
from
it.
that, because that part gets stuffed down in that idea of pink, you know?
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm with you there because we actually for our Vixen Mastermind launch weekend, which is for female entrepreneurs, right? We sent them a feminine archetype quiz, which was kind of just fun, and we're like dress like your archetype for dinner on Saturday night, right?
I love
But
that.
I want women to play with this. So like I always come out the lover. So I'm like, cool, I'm wearing like a bright pink dress with gold dots and like high heels. Like we're gonna have fun. It was so funny. Like my best friend came out as the maiden. She's like, I just don't think I'm the maiden. And we went through it. I'm like, oh, you're so the maiden. We really had fun with that. But I mean, it's just really, however deep someone wants to go with this, exploring it. Like, what do you think the different parts are you? What do you bring to the table? Because, in I guess in aspiring to be more feminine or divine feminine, what we want to be careful of is putting ourselves back in a box. And I found myself doing that to myself, right? And I'm like, oh, hold on, my femininity is much more like bold out there. And then I had this astrological reading, and I have a lot of masculine energy that I channel through things, right? I was like, okay, this actually feels better to me than what I was thinking I needed to be, right? So when I think the best thing is just play with it. I don't know. Do you have any other guidance with it? I mean, obviously they can work with someone, they can work with you or find someone to do the work. But I think the beginning is like just playing with it, which one brings pleasure and two lets you explore.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think the idea of play is a great idea. You don't have to take any of this also seriously.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you totally could if you're going deeper and all that, but there's also just a joy in simply exploring and bringing that aspect of play to what you're doing. So yeah, like playing with the different ideas and I know when we were working together and you were talking about
Mm-hmm.
creating an altar, we created an
Yeah.
altar for Venus.
Yep.
And you can bring some of that aspect of play into that if you're into that kind of thing. If you're into, creating ceremony and doing ritual and inviting. I don't know if you can see it. I have, you probably can't see it here, but over here in my corner, I have a big statue of Aphrodite,
Nice.
which is also Venus, like Aphrodite and Venus. She is the goddess of one of the things of pleasure and prosperity and beauty and all these things and that is one of the things that when you connect with her, that is what she will tell you to do. She's like, go play more, like have fun with this. Don't, like you said, don't put yourself in the box. You don't have to take everything so seriously all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you know play with the different colors, do some ritual, do some ceremony, bring that sense of lightheartedness to it, and uh don't bring so much of that, like that masculine seriousness to everything, because the feminine definitely likes to play.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to say less hustle, more play. It doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you're not going to be successful, and the other thing I like to challenge women to do is because I love sharing wins, and that's a big, part of what we do when we're all
Hmm.
together and we'll clap for each other. But I like to encourage women to think of a win not just as something you did, but maybe it's something someone did for you or something that happened for you, to start opening them up to receptivity. Because I feel like, a lot of women are missing the receiving aspect of being feminine as well, which is one of our greatest powers. So, always just how can you do this? How can you add more play? Just small things. So, I love it because a lot of things we're talking about today are probably very new and very deep for some of our listeners, but once you start, you just never know where it will end. Like I had a huge realization. We were visiting friends, and one of my friends is pretty direct. Like most people probably don't like him, but he's actually well known for that. And he asked me a question. He was like, "Oh, well, what was the trouble in your childhood?" And I was like, "Oh, I had like an ideal childhood." And he was like, "April, no one has an ideal childhood." And like from there, months later, all this trauma came out. And like, it's just like, I was sitting there like, no, I had an ideal childhood. And like, I had no idea that question would spur all this like spiritual growth that came to me. And then working with you was wonderful. So real quickly, I'm going to share, why I came to work with you, what we did together. And then I think we have some things to offer the audience, and then we'll do some closing comments if that works for you, Cindy.
It's great.
Perfect. So I met Cindy. Actually, I saw you on YouTube talking about the divine feminine, and I looked up your website and I was, ooh, I really like her. Like I felt very attracted to talk to you. And so I set up a call for your Sacred Alchemy. It's a 90-day. And I remember talking to you and you're like, do you think you need to work with me? And I was like, yeah, I do. Like, so I love that because, you're very open and you really want to help people. Like that's what became obvious to me. And you want to help people that are ready for what they're going through. And so we worked together at a time where I realized I wanted to step away from my financial practice. I just fully stepped out last month, so March 15th of 2023, but the process started May of 2022. So I was kind of at this crossroads where I was feeling called to do something else, but I had this client base, a family business where I had promised to take care of everyone. And that was really important to me. And what you and I discovered is I guess I have lifetimes of this responsibility issue where I feel like I need to take care of and rescue other people. And so I had to do my own work to be able to like step out of that business. And I mean, luckily my brother took it over. So, I was really blessed because I didn't know was going to be the ending when you and I were talking, right? I don't know if you remember, but I was really torn. Do I keep
totally
both?
Remember.
Do I just go fully? And for me, it was the hardest thing I've been through other than my divorce in my life. And so, yeah, just working with you helped me do that inner work on me so that I could be the solid person to one, make the right decision, and to live through that decision. Because if anyone has parted from a business, it's it's almost like a divorce, right? Even if you want to, I remember the day I was like, oh, I think I just got fired from my own business. And I was like, what the heck do I do now? It's just like all this
creation. It's your baby to a certain extent.
Yeah, exactly. So, so I love that. And I owe so much to you. And I love that we're sitting here like a month after, I made that full transition and that we get to revisit. So thank you so much. It's incredibly important to me and you're incredibly important to me. So I appreciate our time today.
Yeah, and I love seeing you doing this. And
thank you.
And I love when I remember when we were talking and you had the idea of what you're doing now, and you told me the title. You said, I think I want to call it Vixen. And I'm like, ooh, that sounds so awesome and yummy. And I'm almost kind of jealous, like, wow, like I want to, it was so, yeah. And, anyways, the fact that you've come full circle and now that you're helping so many people and helping so many women with what you're doing, it's amazing.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, I'm sure you wake up some days saying, gosh, I get to do what I want every day, right? And like you said, we all have our moments where we kind of go backwards. But it's pretty amazing. So I love it. I hope that today our conversation inspired some women to take courageous steps, even if it's dipping their toe in the pleasure pool every day and doing something different. So, Cindy, I want to ask, what did you love about our conversation today?
Wow. I mean, so many things. I love talking about the sacred feminine. It's a topic that's really important to me, and even talking about pleasure, because even I don't know. I just think that that's a really important message to spread
Hmm.
for people and for women especially. That we might understand that on a rational level, but to really understand on a visceral level the importance of connecting with that part of ourselves and our femininity, and the fact that we got to talk about it today and state the importance of it, and hopefully that will, that will help inspire someone to invite more pleasure, and the how that is such an important part of the feminine journey and stepping into your power. So I love that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I loved having you here. And I loved how you broke down why women should be experiencing pleasure. Like you said, that's just the logical part, right? So, what we have to do is to encourage them to go out and play and experiencing it so that, as you mentioned, they might have that visceral experience of what it really feels like because we can't really know something until we experience and live it, right?
And it doesn't have to be complicated. Like we
Hmm.
say, the ways, just some examples of how you can bring simple pleasure into your life. It's enjoying when you sit down and eat, because we all have to eat, to
Yep.
actually sit and actually feel the food, taste the food, the texture of the food. Like, can you actually describe it? That's a sensual practice. Sensual, sensational pleasure practice has to do with your senses. When you smell, are you really present? Because what it does is establish presence.
I
Can
like it.
you bring it in, the pleasure of when you are cooking something? Let's say, because I think cooking is such a
Mm,
great way to bring it in. Can you
me
enjoy
too.
the senses? And when you're touching, like even when you're putting lotion on your body or doing anything like, are you actually feeling the experience of touch? So this pleasure is brought in through your senses, and they can be very simple, everyday things that you can do to open it up into your life. It doesn't have to be like complicated. Like, you don't have to take a trip to the beach or anything like that. You can bring in pleasure into your everyday experiences. So I think that's also an important part to bring in. That pleasure doesn't have to be like this big thing. Pleasure is available to you right now with anything that you're doing. Just simply open your eyes and look around. Look at the beautiful sunset, or look at the birds, or look at the trees. And again, it's visual as well. Just play with your senses and bring it in that way. I think that is an important part of understanding pleasure. It doesn't have to be some big magnanimous thing that opens you up to it.
I love that. And it's a good reminder for me too. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to ask our audience if they would share with us what they loved about today's episode. And what we'd also love to hear is if you're inspired to put pleasure into your life in any way. So share with us. You can leave us a review below. You can answer below in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if you do that, please just email my team at vixengathering.com, and send us your iTunes ID, and we would love to thank you with the Money Alchemy intro course that Cindy has so graciously offered. So again, we'd love to hear from you. I know Cindy would love to hear how you're inspired by today. So we look forward to hearing from y'all, and then we're going to bring it home. So Cindy, I always say the world needs more love. That's kind of my message, right? So if you had some parting words for our audience or the world, before we go there, I'd also like to encourage people to check out the Women Watching the Sacred Alchemy course on your, well, that's one-on-one coaching with you. And I know you have a number of other offerings. So is there anything else you'd like to mention today?
I mean, I think the one-on-one coaching is a great place to start. I also do, when there's a space on my calendar, individual sessions as well. But
Nice.
the best container, if you're wanting to go deeper into that work of opening yourself up to your pleasure and up to your highest self, and doing the work of just getting out of your own way so that you can experience that,
Which we
then
all
yeah, the
need.
sacred alchemy, it's like a 90-day container where we take you through that. Yeah, that's a great place to begin. And it acts as a catalyst. What I say, most of the time is, basically all I do is save you time.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, why wait until whenever to live your best life? When
Yeah.
you come see me, I'm just saving you time so that you can live it now.
Yeah.
And start the process of stepping into who you're here to be, instead of like having to wait. And like, especially like having to wait another lifetime, if you believe in that kind of thing. It's like, no, let's get to it. Let's do it now.
Enjoy it. I love it. And I would agree, because that's the program that I went through with you. And as I already explained, I mean, it literally changed my life and gave me the fortitude to make a change I needed to make for myself and for my purpose here on earth. So I would totally agree with that. So again, I was talking about how I love to, tell everyone the world needs more love. So what would be your parting words to our audience today and to the world in general?
Well, besides the fact of what we just talked about bringing that sense of sensuality and pleasure into your everyday experience, going along the lines with that is that the love, the joy, and that everything that you're seeking, truly, truly, I say this all the time, it is all available to you right now. You are worthy right now. um, Love is available to you right now. There's not anything that you have to, there's not a particular way that you have to be. There's nothing that you have to do. There's nothing that you have to achieve, that it is within you right now already. And to just know that, like, to keep affirming that with yourself, it's all available to you right now. You are already good enough. You're already beautiful enough. You already have what you are seeking. It's all right here. All you have to do is to take off the veils that are covering you from seeing that. That's what the work is. The work is
Mm-hmm.
just taking the mask off, you know, taking off the glasses that keep us from seeing clearly, and knowing that it's just here. It's just here. It's just waiting for you to wake up to it.
Oh, I love that. I actually got chills as you were saying that. So, Cindy, thank you. It was really an honor to be here with you today. I hope that you have a fantastic rest of the day, and the same to all of you listening. Have a great one.
Thank you.